I think the problem that society has really skewed for us is if you're an entrepreneur or if you're creating value, you need to have that producer mindset. Most people have the consumer mindset and they consume before they produce.
Correct.
And I'm trying to teach my kids, let's produce first. Let's create value. Let's invest in something. And then from that production, you can consume.
I'm going to do a little different intro today. I want to grab you guys in here because we're going to talk about mortgages and mayhem, do-it-yourself renovations, family wealth, legacy building, flipping your house, maybe your family dynamics at the same time. I don't know. We'll see what happens on today's podcast. But really, it's about exploring the art of growing, maybe even arguing over your spouse with paint colors, or dealing with kids in real estate or family opportunities. Remember, guys, ROI can sometimes stand for relatives obviously interfering with life. It doesn't always stand for what you think it does. But let's focus on the building of assets in both family and life today. How about that, Gino?
Neil, I want to do one other thing. I don't
What's
want to
that?
get hurt while we record this podcast because I know you're hobbling around a couple of days ago.
No
I've had
hurting.
injury. So no hurting on this podcast. We're going to sit down. We're not moving, just our lips possibly.
No phantom pains or any other. I was telling him in the green room a minute ago how I went to sleep the other day and woke up with an injury. Like I can't be at that stage in my life. I'm only 48, but it just literally happened that I woke up and like for 3 days I'm hobbling around on my foot thinking I got injured, and really it was just some sort of systemic response or whatever. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
And Neil, that's a great intro to,
Yep.
isn't that how life is? There's no instruction manual. I've got 6 kids. The first child is born. It's like, here you go. Figure it out.
No, man, there's no
Same
instruction.
thing in real estate. Like multifamily is the same thing. You buy your first deal. It's like, okay, you could go get mentors, you can learn. And I've done all that. But when it's your money, it's your reputation, it's your hard work on the line, the instruction manual is pretty hard to find. So you just got to figure it out. And that's the key.
Right.
If you're watching and you're listening to this, or you're watching an influencer online, don't think they've got it figured out. Everybody in life is winging it, and we're all figuring it out as we go.
No, we really are. And still many of the times as we get into doing things and doing deals and running businesses and starting, this and launching that and selling this and acquiring that, we think we've got so much of it together. And then it's just every once in a while, something trips you up along the way and you're like, really? That's a new one. Have you had one of those experiences recently where you're just like, oh, wow, that just happened?
It's every, like when you have 6 kids and you're trying to teach your kids how to build businesses. Now, getting out of college, should they go to college? How are they going to spend their money? I mean, all of that is, you're just trying to figure out, and every child is unique. Everyone is unique. And you need to talk to that child and to that child specifically, and they all learn differently. It's just, it's really challenging.
6 is big. I got 4. So you're 2 more above me. So there you go. Show me up one more time. There you go, Gino. You win in the game of life. All right. You're more man than me. I used to joke with people who were like, oh, why do you have so many kids? I'm like, dude, seriously? I can't keep my wife can't keep her hands on me. Like, it's
the other way around in my household. I gotta be honest with you on that
the other
one.
way around. Well, I mean, none of my kids would be here if it wasn't for my drive. Let's just put it like that. Yours probably wouldn't be around either. And then we get into it and like, well, how many? Yeah, they are so unique. And my oldest, who's in my world, is 16, believe it or not, and has just got her permit and took out her first couple drives. Ironically enough, it wasn't with me because mom was concerned about, this situation. So I got put up for, hey, I'm going to do the driving. And so before I can get to it, those 2 have already gone on 2 trips together and successfully made a good trip out yesterday and feel good about the way it's going. And I'm like, okay, well, you guys just keep going. This is a new experience for all of us, having a new driver in the family.
It's terrifying. I'm not going to lie to you. I am not good at that. What I am good at is we have a golf cart here in Florida.
Right.
So my kids all drive golf carts. I can take them out in the neighborhood. And actually, the 10-year-old right now is driving and using the pedals for the first time this week, doing both at the same time. It's huge. But then when they get into a real car, like mechanized, 6,000 pounds, it's not that I'm worried about them. I'm worried about all the other idiots on the road.
Yeah, because they're going to hit. No doubt. And we have a golf cart here on our acreage too. We use all over the place. So every kid, even our 11-year-old, has now been driving the golf cart. In fact, my oldest was driving our Dodge truck, a big 2500 Ram, to go up and down to get the gas with me when she was 10 and 12 and 13 years old. So she's not new to this because of where we live and how we do our lifestyle. Yes. But yeah, I really, when it gets down to it, practically, I know other people think that we're the problem, but in actuality, they're the problem, right? Because they, I don't trust any of you out there on the road, my kid.
I don't. I agree. I don't.
I haven't trusted you around me when I'm driving in the car. I mean, good gosh, it's like I don't think there's anybody rolling with the rules of the road anymore. when it
Yes.
comes to merging in life. And that's a good segue for this conversation because I think a lot of people are trying to merge in life like they're merging on the freeway.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Where does that come to you in your world? I mean, with the kids and the family and the real estate business, where
Well,
are you running into that?
for me, I started out in the restaurant business and it was challenging early on for me. I loved it for a lot of years. It was a small
Yeah.
family business. Pops passed away in 2007. And at that point, I thought I was living his dream, to be honest with you, when I really reassessed it. And this is for anybody listening. You need to get clear on what you want in life. I think
Hmm.
people are chasing things. And you said a few minutes ago, something pops up and then you lose sight and then you go down this other rabbit hole. That's what happens with a lot of us, whether we're creating wealth, whether we're building a family.
Yeah.
Focus on what you want. I think you need to understand what your values are. Don't get pushed by other people to focus on what their values are. And the first thing that I think anybody needs to do is to get clear on what you value. What is it? Is it integrity? Is it hard work? Is it discipline? Is it responsibility? Is it control? Those are some of mine, family. I understand those. And when I was at the restaurant, I had some of those, but I wasn't able to scale and I wasn't able to make enough money. And I created the business under the false pretense of starting a business to provide for my family
Hmm.
instead of starting a business to provide for the customer. And once I understood that, it took me a lot of years to understand that. And I think that's why most business owners, entrepreneurs, small business
Yeah.
owners, we burn out because we can't scale. It's only thinking about us, not about thinking about the intrinsic value and the value that you can bring to your customer or to the marketplace. And when we started buying multifamily, it's two people that you really need to focus on before you even get paid, especially if you're raising money. It's the investor and it's the resident in your unit. Because for you to raise rent or to collect the rent, you have to deliver a good product, especially nowadays with all those rent revolts. And then obviously, if you have an investor who's investing alongside you or your partner, you need to bring them a tremendous amount of value. You need to
Yeah.
pay
Value.
them first.
Value is what we talk about a lot. And I've actually just posted a thing I use Grok 2 on X, which is a very powerful AI tool now to
Mhm.
create an image of a guy who had a black t-shirt on with white lettering. And it said profits plus value, or excuse me, purpose plus value equals profit, which is exactly where you are and what I've been saying continuously to people. If you're going to develop a business, real estate, physical real estate assets like Gino, if you're going to be in the virtual real estate world like us with physical inventory, you have to think of the purpose and value of what you're doing in that business, who you're providing for, why you're giving them this information or this product or this service or this real estate or this building or whatever. And then the byproduct of that will be profits, not just financial. Could be spiritual, family,
Yes.
physical, and financial is just one of those things. It can't be a predominant factor. It's always the opposite of being the predominant factor, isn't it? Whenever I
Yes.
tried to make it as the forefront of the purpose of what I did, it always became an imbalance. It always failed.
I'm just writing down a couple of quotes that I've been trying to live by the last decade or so. Profits the fuel. It's
Mm.
not the destination.
Yep.
I think if we look at it from that perspective,
Yes.
and I heard this one from Brendan Bouchard, purpose over popularity. And I think
It's a good one.
most people online right now are trying to be out there and trying to be the influencer and trying to be popular, but are they really aligning with their true purpose? And I think when you really and truly align with your true purpose, more of you shows up, more of you is
Yeah.
giving. And I think you're able to create more value because you're focused on your purpose, not just being the popular one out there telling everyone that you've got millions of dollars and Lambos. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you start falling into that bucket because you don't have that attraction marketing at all. I think you need to fall back about what your purpose is. And really aligns well with what you just quoted as well.
Well, it does because it gets down to where do you crash and burn and where do you see your opportunities? Where I crashed and burned was going after profits only to try to change my family's life. And in actuality, I just made it more difficult. When I switched that around, I was like, okay, what's the purpose of what I'm doing, who I'm helping, and how I can provide? By proxy, getting someone else successful from things I know how to do, they're going to profit. I'm going to profit. This is a better relationship. And as soon as I got a hold of that and grasped that concept, it in 12 years has changed my life dramatically.
Neil,
Um,
you're talking about the scarcity mindset.
oh, I
And
was in it. I didn't know I was in it. There's a trick to the scarcity mindset, right? The limiting beliefs aspect of it is one component, but
yes.
clearly the scarcity and fear of the what is known and unknown and things you think you control or you want to try to control, but in actuality, when you surrender to them is when you actually win.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, that was a tough lesson to learn, right? Because I had to go bankrupt to figure that one out.
It takes a lot because I think we're pre-programmed to have that scarcity mindset and to say, there's only 8 slices in a pie. I need to get as much as I can. But once you
George.
realize, especially in real estate, like real estate, you can do a little
Yeah.
portfolio by yourself. You can have 30 or 40 units. But if you start partnering up, it gives you the ability to get into bigger deals, more profitable
Sure.
deals, and you'll
Syndication,
be able
right?
to serve more people. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and that's a great component of any growth model with any business is really understanding who to serve and how to serve more of them, and
Hmm.
then really staying focused on who it is you can serve and why you're providing that benefit. And then, is the Good to Great book I constantly reference from Jim Collins, is you become a hedgehog. And if you hedgehog in and you're not known as the guy who has 5 different types of businesses you're doing, but you're known as the guy who does one kind of business 5 different ways, then
Mm.
the affect is your network grows faster, your things grow bigger, your rabbit holes go deeper, the trust extends farther into it. Is that a similar experience on your side?
It is. For us, on the education side, the Jake and Gino has really helped us, not from the monetization of the education platform, but for the ability to get on every week with owner operators. We were on with a company called Verifast this past week. They do tenant credit check, credit scores, credit checks. They've got an amazing model. They're using AI. They have their own algorithm. I mean, when you can cut delinquencies by 1 or 2% and get your economic occupancy up by 1 or 2 percentage points, we're doing over 2 million a month in rent collections. That's a significant amount of money monthly that this company can go and save us. Now, obviously, we've got to have that conversation, but that's something that opportunity would have. I mean, we never even heard of it if we weren't on. We had another company called Property Meld on that has maintenance. They do a lot of stuff with our companies with multifamily that do maintenance. And we have a maintenance coordinator now because of that relationship, because we had that conversation. So if you're pigeonholed and you're just known for your thing and you don't branch out and you don't start networking, like you said, your network, you start learning things. You need to work. Everyone says you need to work on the business. You're always working in the business. I think working on the business, that component is our education company.
Yeah, it is good. And distinguish the two for those who are listening. When you say in the business and on the business, what does that mean to you?
So when you're working in the business, it's you are picking up the phone. You're in the daily grind every single day. When you're working on the business, you're taking a step back and saying, okay, I need to figure out people, systems, and culture. Those are the 3 things when you're working on the business. And systems is important in our thing with multifamily. You have 3 or 4 properties, you could probably do them all yourself. But when you have 1,800 units spread out over 34 different assets, you need to have property logs. Every single property needs to be categorized. So when a property manager leaves, the next one comes in and it's there. We have what we call weekly reports every Friday that go out from every single property every single week. We know what the income for the week, the delinquencies. We have what we call KPIs, key performance indicators, and that's a lot of the stuff that when you're first starting out, not really that important. But as you start to scale and as you start to see, while real estate is not just an asset, it's a business and it's a scalable business. And if you can't measure it, then you can't manage it. And I think
True
that's
story.
what working on the business has really helped us to be able to scale.
How is that translated for your kids, family? We talk about legacy, building. What are you building into the 6 kids you have that follow along with that?
I'm building. I'm trying to teach them the difference between someone who's successful and someone who isn't successful. And I'll give you an excellent example of this. I've got a bookkeeper. She's wonderful as a bookkeeper. She's got kids. So whenever I schedule a call, it's 50-50 getting her on the phone. And I always said to myself, why is she not an accountant or a CPA? And I answered my own question. Last week, we were all on the call, me and the 3 kids, because I want the kids to be on the calls every month because I want them to go through their general ledger, their P&L monthly, all the income coming in, all the expenses coming out, and I want them to be on with her. So by the end of the year, we're all caught up. January 5th comes, taxes are really easy to do. She doesn't show up. So what do? Lemons out of lemonade. I'm just like, kids, we're on this call. I'm going to record the call for her. We did a 15-minute call. I went through all of their bank statements. I went through all their income items, all their expense items, and I sent it over to her. She did the P&Ls, had 1 or 2 questions, and that's what I want to teach my kids. I want to teach the kids about responsibility. And if you're going to teach your kids about money and about business, you need to teach them and you need to show them. You need to show them everything. But one thing I'll say, Neil, is I wouldn't have done this to kids that are younger. Like if my kid's 12 or 13 years old at the time, I've learned this. I used to try to really force it on them. and push it on them. Now what I do is I take a step back and I'm like, hey, if you don't want to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad at that age, I get it. It's probably boring for you. You know what I'm saying? But when they start getting jobs and they start asking those questions, now
Yeah.
my 11th grader, she's doing consumer math. It is phenomenal because I love that I get to sit there. I talk about balance sheets and assets and liabilities in a fun way. And
Right.
you need to make it enjoyable and you need to make it
Yeah.
relatable. And that's
Right.
one thing that I really learned as far as trying to create legacy with them and trying to create great habits for them.
That is amazing. Yeah, instilling in a young value is important, and having that desire for you and the entrepreneurial spirit to go and invest that into your kids. I can't tell you how many times I ran across people who are very client focused, very fun on what they're doing, and then they put their kids in the public school system and don't spend any time
Oh,
leading, nurturing, or serving leading them in their own affect, their own home, and they're wondering why these kids are having such a hard time. And I'm like, well, you're spending so much time on your clients and your own business, but you're not actually spending purposeful time with your family, investing in the kids that are in your house. I'm like, this is a huge dichotomy for me. I'm going to call it out real quick, which is probably going to make some people uncomfortable. But if you're at home working in a business that you own and you are not putting your kids' priorities, like homeschooling them, for example, teaching them, building them as entrepreneurs, what are you actually teaching them? You're actually giving them up to the system. And I will die on that hill, because I will tell you the amount of kids that are suffering from not having direct parent relationships, having taught business and finance, and not making money a four-letter word in your house, but also just getting involved and invested in their time and energy and attention, and yet doing it for all the business life and work they say they do it for all these other people. That's kind of a big hypocritical thing in my mind. It's like, if
Neil,
you're going to invest, do it.
Yeah, but that's a hard conversation and a bigger
Or
conversation.
conversation. I'm not saying it's fun, and I know there are people out here who are going to criticize me for this, but if you're going to put that much time and energy into other people outside of your home, why are you not focusing it on your children?
As a person who tries to ask intelligent questions, my question would be, well, what's the reason why you're doing that? And then you have to dive into their psychology, into the way they were raised. Are they compassionate about themselves? Do they love themselves? I mean, the good book says, love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yep.
A lot of us don't have self-love. So if we don't love ourselves, it's really hard to love others. That's the reality. So if there's a little self-hatred, a little self-loathing, and then, society tells us that we need to work hard for our kids. And then a lot of us are doing it for our kids. But did you ever stop and ask your kids, hey kid, do you want me to go work 15? What do you want? Most of us don't ask our children what they want. We're just presupposing, and we've been conditioned by that.
Correct.
And I think for those of you listening, ask yourself the question. I mean, it's, when you're younger, your values are formed between the ages of 9 and 13 and 14. What was going on at that time period?
Years.
Ironically, my father had a restaurant. At age 9, I was going to work with dad. I was working my ass off in the kitchen. Hard work, responsibility, family business, savor. All of those values and all those traits were formed at that young age. It took me a long time to figure that out. And why do I like this education company so much that I've created? Is because my father was a mentor to me. I saw nurturing. I saw what creating impact for others, the admiration and the respect that his employees had for him and his customers. That's what I wanted in my life. And, when I had the opportunity, I became a life coach and I started the Jake and Gino community. So if you're running out there and you haven't started connecting these dots, go back and start connecting these dots. And you know what? I don't want to tell anyone to go out and get a therapist, but sometimes it may help, because it's always good to look back in your past, reflect on what happened back there, then come into the present of where you are, accept that reality. And then from there, you can start planning for the future that you want. Instead, most of us are just running around, putting out fires today, not really thinking about what we're doing. We're working on subconsciously or doing things unconsciously, not understanding why. And that leads to a really difficult life and a confusing life, and people who are working 14 hours a day and neglecting their children. That's
They
what
are, and they're always, they're so, and I'm speaking to the guys right now because we're
Yes.
guys. So ladies, no offense, but this is for your men. But the end of the result is they spend so much time thinking about the future needs, future desires, paying this off, putting money back for this.
Yes.
What if my kids want to go to the future? What if they want to do this? What if we want to have a retirement? What if we want all these things? And they don't just enjoy the present enough. They don't see it as a present, literally. And so they do all this stuff today, and then they go home all stressed, or they go back and they're all, flustered and frustrated, and they got nothing left to give to their families. And the families, in my opinion, should be the priority for men first.
Yes.
Work should actually be second. And so how you fit that into whatever you do, please take no judgment out of that. I'm only challenging men who probably know this, because I talk to a lot of you. who come to me and are like, hey, I want to get out of this corporate job. I want to change this thing. I want to build better finances. I want to spend more time with my kids. How do I buy back some time with my kids? And I'm like, well, first it starts with you practicing the activity of doing it. And then it starts with you using a vehicle or mechanism. I don't care what it is at this point, whether it's real estate, flipping cars on Truro, or e-commerce, do something, right?
Mhm.
Get started on building that path forward, stepping that every 3 feet, so you can figure out a way to start moving yourself out of those other environments and into the environment of your family and life and putting that purpose forward. If you can do that, it's so much more rewarding. That is a legacy, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't that what we're
Yes.
talking about, Gino?
It is. And I have a good friend. His name is Jim Shields. He wrote a book called 18 Summers. And the simplicity of the ideas in the book are
Yeah.
just annoying. They're nauseating, but they're so
I've heard the
simple.
18 Summers thing before. It
You
drives
know,
me as
and,
I reject it. I reject your whole premise.
well, but one of the things that he does in there, and I think that was written to shock people and to say, hey, live in the present.
Yes.
Because it's funny because my kid, my 25-year-old, she came back home. She was a missionary for 3 years. She lived away. She's back home. She loves being back home because I
Mm,
practiced 18 summers. And it's interesting
good.
because what he said is, and I sort of agree with this, pick one day every quarter and let your child do anything they want. Do what they want. Spend the day with them. And then you start building that. And you don't have to leave your corporate job. It's a really simple thing to do 4 or 5 times a year. If you've got 4 kids, that's 16 times a year, 16 days out of the year. And you're spending quality time with them doing what they want. Going to Legoland, playing laser tag, riding the golf cart, going to the coffee shop, whatever they want. And I think that's how you start. And then obviously the next component is you need your kids to see that you have a great relationship with your spouse. Date night
Big one.
probably should be a must. And the way you communicate with your wife, having special time, maybe going away every now and again, I think that's an important thing to incorporate in your life.
It's an important thing. It's a critical thing to instill in the values of a home, right? When we see so
Mhm.
many broken homes now and so much disregard for the sanctity of the marriage and the home and the way things are working, I know there's a conservative amount of us that are going back the other direction now and flat
Yes.
just rejecting the premise that it has to be that way, that it ever had to change in the first place, and that really when you get to the core fundamental of cultural issues, things that are not allowing people to grow wealth, not allowing them the benefits of looking from a legacy perspective, it is that they're so bogged down in all the bad, poor making decision efforts and buying into the cultural narratives and the idea that there's nothing better for them. That can't get better for them. And again,
Mhm.
limiting beliefs kick into this right now because so many people are feeling it from the decisions that have been made in the past, all adding up to, well, groceries cost too much or gas too cost, too much. And guys, by the way, I mean, I'm speaking from a position of a guy who had, nothing in my bank account at one point and 3 small children and a wife to feed. So I'm not speaking from a higher position. I've been in the trenches when there was no money and you're trying to make your kids, lives work and you're trying to get this thing back together. But I can
Mhm.
tell you, being now on the other side of that, one of the ways we worked ourselves out of that is we actually pulled in as a family, right? We pulled together as a family, my wife and I. We pulled together as a unit. We said, we're going to figure this out. I'll make whatever you get go longer. I'll help with the kids so it's not as stressful for you. I want to, she gave up her career as an RN to do that and decided that's, of her own free will, that's what she wanted to do. And now I can see why, as she instills every day the, CEO sergeant mindset that she uses in our house to move these girls forward.
Mhm.
And it's tremendous to watch that, having that partnership. And I know there are many out there that want that. And as being a product of a divorce, not my parents, but one I, did on my own, I can tell you that's not a good way to do it either. And when you're not yoked to the right person, it makes all of everything we're talking about today so difficult. It makes it
Mhm.
so extremely difficult. Now you've got the world and your home fronts. You're fighting 2 different battlefronts, and you can't end up doing it very well. This is, I know you're agreeing with this. You probably have a lot more history to share with us in this way too. But I think, the end result is that while you are talking about wealth today, Gino, and why you have this history, there are some core fundamental things about your family that differentiate you, I think, a lot to a number of folks that I've spoken with. You had a dad who was involved in your life. That's a big win right there. I mean, in
Mhm.
today's terms, that's huge. He
Mhm.
instilled core values in you, taught you a work ethic, put you in the shop. Even at 9, people are like, I couldn't make my baby work at 9. It's like, well, at 9, I couldn't wait to get out and work because we
I
didn't
couldn't
have
either.
any money that was beyond what my dad provided, which was great. And it took care of everything, but there's no more. Right.
Mhm.
So money was a 4-letter word. So I wanted to work. Like I wanted to get in there, but he taught me, like, it sounds like your dad, tenacity and perseverance. And what I say is, suck it up, buttercup, and get it done. which is amazing for you. And I think I didn't get that personally until maybe the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't
Yeah.
really hit me. And he's still alive. He's 82. He's kicking. He's an old Navy boy. He's hard to put down, but he's a much different guy than I was a kid. It's
Yeah.
very different. How does that reflect now on where you're going from here, Gino? Like as you continue forward, is it
Mm.
driving a different purpose and mission for you?
Not really. The legacy component is important. I need to hit on that just for another split
Yeah,
moment for us. I think the problem that society has really skewed for us is if you're an entrepreneur or if you're creating value, you need to have that producer mindset. Most people have the consumer mindset and they consume before they produce.
correct.
And I'm trying to teach my kids, let's produce first. Let's create value. Let's invest in something. And then from that production, you can consume. And I think the other thing everybody should do who's listening to this, once you get off, have an honest conversation with your spouse about money. I'll bet you most people listening to this have never really sat down with their spouse and said, well, what are your thoughts on money? How were you raised? Because my wife and myself are polar opposites. Her parents were divorced. Money was, I don't say it was tight, but it was very flimsy. We got
Mm,
married. I'd find money all over the house in her pockets. It was very whimsical. I was raised by two immigrants, hardworking. I was a saver. I could
hmm
save a lot of money. And she thought saving, okay. So at times we would butt heads. I mean, when we got married, I basically said she was financially free. So she never even worried about a bill. So the way we really looked at money was complete polar opposites. And when I told her I want to become financially free with real estate, I want to get out, she didn't understand what that meant. I basically said, I don't want to worry about paying for my kids' dental bills. I just want to have things covered and I can enjoy it. And I can have your mother come down here and we can pay for her apartment down here. That to me is what financial freedom is. And when I told her that, she's like, huh, I didn't know that. So have a heart to heart with your spouse and see where you are with your relationship with money and with their relationship with money, because that's where a lot of the arguments come into play. And we
Yeah,
all have our preconceived notions of what we heard when we were little. It's not right or it's not wrong, but that's the story you've been telling yourself. Tell your spouse that story. Try to get on the same page. And I think ultimately, if you can consume less and produce more, like what you guys did. I mean, if your wife had to leave her job, you're dependent on that income. That consumption is gone. You can't
yep,
use that money anymore. You
nope,
have to pull back and
that's right.
listen. We got to produce before we start consuming.
Yeah, that's such a great saying. I don't want to trump anything you just said. So we're very much on the same page. But in
Mhm.
terms of the real estate side, where if we pivot for a second, kind of taking all that forward, talk to me about where you're at in the real estate business right now in 2024 and 2025. We know they've dropped 50 basis points just now on the market. That's not, that's a nice way of making a small number, a big number sound better than it actually was.
Mhm. It
Because they're
is.
jacking with us. That doesn't really change the forecast for a lot of people, does it?
It doesn't. I think, unfortunately, I've been blessed because Jake and I started buying deals by ourselves, no investors. We refinanced funds, continued to buy. Then we syndicated three properties, about 400 units. We sold all of our syndications. And in the last 5 years, we've just been buying deals just with our own capital. And it's been very good for us. And we've been growing and it's been very methodical. We haven't outgrown our infrastructure. We're what we call vertically integrated. So we manage our own properties. And this 50 basis point drop, I mean, the last three times they did that was in '01, 2007, and 2020. And those are precursors to recessions. And I've been saying for the last 18 months, it feels as if we've been in a recession. And I haven't heard anybody say that. And that's what the Fed's signaling. And now you're going to tell me that inflation is at 2.5% right now, which I don't believe. So they're
Yeah.
signaling and saying, oh, we've got inflation under control as if it was transitory 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
No.
And those million jobs that we created a year ago, well, 800,000 of those weren't really created. And all
No.
the jobs that we've created are just people coming back from COVID. So what it shows to me is that the market and the economy is a lot weaker than what they want to let on. They
Mm,
want to do this more for psychological reasons because they're going to continue to
correct.
drop. I think a lot of people who have car loans, who have credit card debt, those kinds of loans, that's going to help. But in the residential market, it's sort of baked in. And I'm hoping by beginning to middle of next year, rates will drop even more. But the problem is when rates drop, investors come in, they're just going to push prices up because all of a sudden
Correct.
the cost of capital is cheaper.
And there's
So
a
if
lot of
you're think
inventory.
Yeah, if you're thinking about investing in real estate, don't wait. I mean, it's a market cycle. You can always buy real estate. You can't always sell it. And some people are
Yeah.
seeing that right now. It's hard to sell some assets right now, but you can buy. You can always buy. You just need to know the strategy to buy in the market cycle that you're in. But as far as prognostications go, in the multifamily space right now, a lot of deals have come online. There's been a lot of building from COVID that's slowed down. It's slowly being absorbed. That's why rents in a lot of these markets have actually dropped. Florida's rents have dropped because they're still getting absorbed. But once they get absorbed, middle of next year, rents are going to continue to go
Rents will
back
go
up
back up. Yeah.
because that supply is going to dry up. Multifamily permits in 2023 have fallen off a cliff. So there's no new building going on. It's just building that was in the process. Once that stops, you're going to see rents go back up.
Yeah, that's good. And the job thing is really big because we know that's now a lie. 800,000 wasn't actually created. They had to go
Insane.
wrote that. And then they told us that the only jobs that were created were actually for illegal aliens. And actually the regular working class have lost 1.2 million jobs.
Isn't that amazing? Like, and then
What a lie.
you just gloss over that.
They
And
just
so how can you
glossed
have
over that
any
lie.
faith? And how can you, and that's what I'm saying. What is a recession? When you can start taking words and you can start redefining words, I have a serious problem with that. So for anybody
Incredible.
listening to this, it's the long term. When you're going to invest in real estate, try not to go. I mean, the high was in 2022. We know that. We're
Yep.
down about 20%. But if you're in real estate trying to time the market, that's when you get caught. When you're trying to say, hey, I've only got 2 years. I need to make money in these 2 years. Classic example. You're going to go out and buy a house. If you're going to be in that house for the next 5, 6, 7 years, it's probably going to be a good bet. But if you've got a time period of 3 years or less, you buy the home and then you have to sell it. Well, what happens if we have another COVID event or there's a recession?
Yep.
The shorter term horizon is what gets people in trouble. And that's what happened over the last 3 years with this short term bridge financing. People were using bridge debt and they didn't understand the tool. If they were experienced, it's one thing. But when you have no experience, you're up against a timeline and you can't deliver. You're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, and real estate is one of those things that, they don't make any more of it. So as you go forward, the opportunities are going to be there. If you buy at a higher percentage now, you can always refinance it a year from now if the basis points drop again, pull some equity out, buy another property, reinvest in the current one, raise rents, go back to the market again. There are a lot of opportunities. And I know we have a number of people that follow this that are involved in real estate and brokering and financing and multifamily and short-term rentals and even real estate in the mobile home parks and all kinds of stuff. So I know a lot of people are listening to what you have to say. In those areas and real estate, where would you be bullish on right now?
Well, I love multifamily, and it's one of those things where that's why I'm a great partner with Jake because we have that long-termism. Back in 2021, 2022, everyone was saying there's no deals in multifamily, and they were right. We only bought maybe 100 units in those 2 years. Everyone was jumping to RV parks. Everyone was jumping to just chase yield.
Parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, and then, but that wasn't our niche. If we want to, we want to become the Chick-fil-A of apartments. We want to deliver superior customer service. And how do you do that if you go into another niche and you're trying to learn that? So for us, multifamily, I think is bullish. I think self-storage long term. People like garbage. They love garbage. It's a great little business model.
And they're having to move, some of them. So they need somewhere to stick their stuff, which is an unfortunate circumstance of a storage unit opportunity.
Yes. I mean, self-storage is great. I would sort of stay away from office. I'm not a big fan of retail as well.
Real estate for me is just that bubble still waiting at the very edge of the pop. It's like really creaking now. You can almost hear it cracking. And
and I think office is an all-time low, I think, for occupancy right now, especially.
It is very low.
You have an 80s build, right? If you have an 80s build and you're trying to go up against a 2015 build office space, you are dead. And that building is built 50 years ago. It's functionally obsolescent. What the hell are you going to do with that building? I don't know what people are going to do.
You can't drop $1 million in it, depending upon its size, and upgrade it, make it modern, but you're going to have to eat the loss on that one if you do. It's a really, where are you? So double clicking on the multifamily, where are you in your sweet spot? Are you 10 units, 5, 25, 50? Where are you at in your kind of sweet spot?
For us, it's probably $. We're in East Tennessee, so Knoxville market. So we closed the deal back in July for $9 million. We closed the deal last month for $12 million. We've got a deal closing next week at $4.5 million. So I mean, every year we can probably purchase between $30 and $40 million just with our own capital. So I mean, on average, about 300 units a year we're looking to purchase. Now, like I told Jake, if the deal comes up and it's a $50 million deal and it's a life-changing deal, we'll syndicate. We'll go out there and find investors to raise capital. So I never want to say never, but understanding to utilize all the tools, whether it's seller financing, whether partnering with other people, whether it's syndication, please just learn all of those tools and then utilize them on a specific deal in a specific part of the market cycle.
Yeah. Well, I'm running through my black book of people I need to introduce you to in my network. I've got the Wealth Without Wall Street guys that you need to go check out. I'll introduce you to Russ and Joey if you don't know them. I definitely think they can be a good guest on their podcast. And definitely they're talking about syndication and real estate, short-term rentals and everything right up here. Your alley, but we also talk about alternative things like Truro in, mobile homes or e-commerce or other ways to divest and invest in things that make sense, either in investing in the knowing or, invest in what you know. So I definitely think there's a number of people I should get you in front of.
Those are all great vehicles. You talk e-commerce, you talk short term. That's where you're making your transactions. That's where you're making what we call your baby money soldiers. Just repurpose them into assets that can create wealth. That's all. Right. Instead, what people do is they take that money and they blow it. And then they're like, every year they've got to go back on the hamster wheel and continue to do it. Just pull a part of that out every year and just put it into an asset that'll appreciate, that'll give you tax benefits, that'll give you a little bit of cash flow. And 5 years from now, you're like, wow, I'm making more money doing this than I am doing that. And I can stop doing that if I want to, but why would I want to? Because I like what I'm doing. So let me just keep doing it.
And just keep digging into the other revenue streams that are within that. For you, other buildings, staying focused. Don't get into mobile homes and other things that don't make sense into your repertoire, and just keep digging down into that. For us, it's e-com. 12 years into this, it is now the software, the other buildings of our businesses we're creating, the other inventory and brands we've got going, the partnerships we're developing, and now in the M&A space, the acquisitions we're going after to expand based on acquisition. So we're simply creating more verticals within our niche and just being a hedgehog. Guys, if you don't have an opportunity, could they go with you? Like, could they go talk to you about this and how to get going in multifamily if that's something they want to dig into?
I mean, if they want to join the mentorship, we have a mentorship program at Jake and Gino. Just go to jakeandgino.com. That's what we love to do. We love to teach. And I think we're unique in the space because we're probably one of the only educators out there that don't raise capital from students. So if you come to Jake and myself and say, hey, I want to learn the business, great. I've got no fund. I've got nothing. So I'm not going to compete with you and the students. So there's over 1,000 students in the platform that are all doing deals themselves, partnering up, raising money. You become part of the community. You're going to work with other students. And Jake and I are not going to say, hey, by the way, I've got a fund here. I've got a deal that I want you to, syndicate with. That's not what this community is about.
No deal is too small or too large, right?
Nope, that's right. A deal is a deal. We bought a 4-unit back in April because it's next to our 12-unit. And that deal is going to print money. It's going to make the 12-unit even more valuable. So, I mean, if you're looking at it from that perspective, and for us, I mean, like you said, no deal is better than a bad deal. That's my overarching thing. If there's like you said, back then, 3-4 years ago, when there were no deals out there, don't force it. The time will come and the winds will change. And if you're there, you can capitalize.
You'll see it and you'll be in the right place at the right time. It's a little bit of luck in business, right?
Yes, I agree.
We have a little bit of that. The longer we go, things just got to come into place, and more often than not, they don't. I mean, you got to kiss a lot of frogs to get to the right deals, but when you're there and you're in the right place, that prince does show up. And,
but it was worth it kissing those frogs to get that deal.
Well, fail up, right? Fail up. It gets a little frustrating at times because you're like, okay, what ends up happening is you don't put any stock in the deal emotionally. You put all the stock in the numbers, and the emotion sort of subsides. Somebody's like, well, you got a new deal? Well, I got like 5 new deals. Oh, you're not excited? Well, I'm not excited until the money hit the bank. Yeah, so at this point, a deal is a deal, and most likely it's going to fail. At least it's going to fail faster. And I'm going to move quicker through the process of doing it. We're going to have to kiss more than 1,000 businesses to get the 5 that we want to acquire in the next, year and a half. So by end of 2025, right? So I know we got a lot of rocks to kiss. And there's some good ones. You look at them like, man, that prince looks really, that could be a prince. That could be the one. It looks like a white horse. And you're like, oh, but no, they lied on their bank statements. It doesn't reconcile it, jerks. And that one gets shut down in diligence.
It's interesting because the framework that we have is buy right, manage right, and finance right. That's the framework that you need to do to get those frogs.
It's the same in my business. I just have different variables to consider. I don't have toilets, tenants, and termites to deal with, but I do have to deal with other factors of the business and inventory and workflow and the logistics of the platform and any other cash flow things we have to manage for inventory and logistics. So it's very much business. It's just slightly different in transactions at the end of the day.
Yes.
One real estate is virtual, one's physical, right?
Yes.
Any other final thoughts I didn't ask you? Any thoughts, conversations I didn't realize I do even like ripping on for 40 minutes? You're easy to talk to, man. You're a fun guy.
Well, I mean, after you've made as many mistakes as I've made, it's pretty easy to have, what is it? A smart person learns by their mistakes. A wise person learns by others. I'm still learning by my own mistakes because
Yeah.
I just like to do stuff and I like to try stuff. And I'm actually reading Ryan Holiday's book, the Stoic book. It's on Stoicism, and it's really helped me out reading about Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus, and then trying to wrap that in to the religious teaching of Jesus and reading the Bible and trying to get a religious perspective on it. Because life can be challenging. Life can be tough. You're an entrepreneur. You know it. It can be scary. You're all alone. I mean, you can talk to your wife. Yeah, but is she making payroll? No, you're making payroll. You're making these decisions that affect families and affect others. And it can be challenging and it can be lonely. So, go out there and find a support group. I've got Jake, thank God, and I've got some other friends, and I've got
That's
another
awesome.
coach who helps me out. But leading on the Bible and leading on all these readings and all these people, it's important. And I think
It is
I
important.
think
And
I-
you said there wasn't an actual playbook for kids, but there is. It's in the Bible.
Mhm.
Go read
It's the Bible.
Proverbs.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
wisdom there about training up children and how to manage and correctly,
Yes.
instill virtues and values and instill confidence in them. It really is a great manual for that.
I agree.
Guys, go over and check out his website. I'll put it up here if you're on the video right now. It's jakeandgino.com. If you get, the show notes and everything is in the bottom. If you're interested in any more about what Gino had to say about multifamily investing, legacy, and wealth, you might want to go check out their platform, go see what they're doing over there. I'd encourage you to do that, as well as check out the social media and conversation we're having here. Ask any comments of the questions, engage, whatever. Like I always say, put tonight comments in there. I don't care. It helps with the, leave a comment, share it with somebody. You might know somebody in the real estate or whatever space who needs to hear this, and I encourage you to share it today. Gino, thanks for coming on and sharing a good word with me, brother.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Guys, head over to voltagedm.com if you are enjoying this and want to go see more podcasts or on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else. If you have any interest in building a lifestyle business, get your soldiers to work, and want e-commerce to possibly be that mechanism, go check that out as well. We'll catch you guys on the next show. Take care.